It was a dream because it was my first movie, and for my first movie, I was surrounded by nothing but women.
Hey, it's Kristen, and welcome to a brand new episode of Pop Culture Planet. I'm so excited to be speaking with Zoey Luna of The Craft Legacy. We dive into her experience as a Latinx transgender woman, as an actress, as an activist, and so much more. I hope you enjoy our conversation. I'm super glad to get to speak with you today about your career and kind of, where you're headed, and of course, The Craft Legacy, which was so much fun.
Oh my God, thank you. So for career, I've known two things. I knew I was a girl, and I knew that I was destined to work in the film industry. That was something that I knew. And I've always been very imaginative, and I've always been super into directing. Like when I was younger, I would play with my dolls, but it would be like I'm making episodes instead of just like playing with my dolls. So for me, it was always a clear thing that I would be like a creative person. So in my future, what I want to see is me definitely. Okay, I also have this dream of being a pop star.
Yes.
I That would be cool, but I don't know if I'm the best singer. So I have a dream of being a pop star actress, maybe not a dancer, but also a director, writer, and just a film creator in general, and maybe even something with Broadway. That's definitely what I'm aiming forward to in my future. And yeah, I'm doing a lot more roles lately, a lot of auditions. I'm now attached to Dear Evan Hansen. So
Ooh, oh wow. That's so
yeah,
exciting.
it
Do
is.
you already like know what you're going to be doing for that?
Yeah, but the public can't.
That's so exciting. I'm a big theater nerd too, so that's awesome. I'm very excited for Dear Evan Hansen.
Thank you.
Going back a little bit, where do you think that your love of entertainment came from? Do you like kind of remember ever seeing any like Latinx or even trans characters or stories on screen that you really connected to, and like how that kind of impacted you growing up?
I saw Charisma Carpenter as Cordelia, and girl, please correct me if she's not Latina, but from what I understood, she was Latina. But I saw characters like Charisma Carpenter's character in Buffy, Cordelia, and I saw, well, this is maybe more now, but Alexa Demi's Maddie and Euphoria, and like those shows have always inspired me that have that type of sassy Latina, which I also think is a stereotype and maybe needs to die down. But I also love that most of the women I saw that were my own cultural background, they played these empowered roles that were just like they were the bombest, like baddest girls in school, and everyone feared them or wanted to partake in sexual activities with them. And so for me, like when I saw my representation, I just really was like, okay, that's who I'm going to be in media and in life in general. And I'm so glad that I had nothing but fierce Latinas to look up to. But yeah, I didn't have a lot of them. So that was kind of hard. And then especially I didn't have many trans women of color in media that were like my age and that transitioned so young. And that kind of sucked because I feel like it would have helped with a lot of the questions I had about like my own gender expression and like who I was gonna be. And if I saw if I saw like a Lourdes on screen, my character, I would have been like, okay, that's who I'm gonna use to reference to my parents when I'm trying to explain how I feel on the inside. So it's nice that I'm getting to partake in that and do that for other kids.
That's amazing. That is so cool that you're able to kind of be that, role model for other people. You are Latinx. What is your relationship like with your Latinx background?
It's pretty like chill. I mean, it's different because it's like, our culture tends to follow a lot of the old traditions and the very Catholic side of our ethnicity, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so it's very straining. And I mean, for me as a Latina, I'm also like pretty pale, and I'm not the darkest Latina out there, and I'm not a Black, Indigenous / Latinx person. So sometimes, you're put in these situations where it's like you're not white, but you're not fully Latinx because people don't consider you to be from your own culture. So it's like I have a seat at the table, but no one's really happy about it. And so, yeah, it's very uncomfortable sometimes with you know, like family gatherings and stuff like that. I mean, all like my dad's side primarily dark, and then my mom's side is primarily fair. But I don't get in either circles because I'm also trans. So it's like I have my privilege, but I'll never be privileged because I'll never actually be a white person, which I'm totally fine with. It is very frustrating sometimes because there's so much intersectionality going on in my identity that holds me back from really being able to be accepted by my own community. I mean, I don't even know Spanish, which sucks. And yeah, it's tricky, but I mean, there's a lot of people in my community who do embrace me and do accept me as who I am, and with all of my non-Spanish speaking limitations. So yeah.
Oh, girl, I feel you. I think a lot of Hispanic people feel the same way that you do. Like, you know, this weird balance of like, I also don't speak Spanish. I also like, you know, I just feel like being a Latina in America, sometimes you don't feel like Hispanic enough.
I have always considered myself a woman unicorn. That's what I've used to get around it. And I mean, it also is something. It's so crazy because it's like right now I'm very like, because I've been quarantined, I'm working on something, so I can't go out anywhere. So like,
Yeah.
you know, the pale ghost is coming out. So I mean, but not every time am I fair skinned. You know, sometimes I'm way darker depending on how much sun I'm getting. So it's like, you know, I've heard a lot of people say like white passing Latinos are Mexican. And I'm like, who are you to say, based off of my skin color, that my heritage isn't a part of me and that I'm now a white person because I have that privilege of being fairer. And so I feel like it's kind of a thing where it's like, you know, hurt people hurt other people. And I think that, you know, as a community, we all need to band together and, you know, obviously acknowledge our privilege, but also like try to understand that everyone goes through shit in our own individual ways. So it's weird because yeah, like I guess if I get darker and if I go out in the sun, I'll be considered my own culture.
I think that just goes back to the idea of like being able to see different types of people on screen and realizing that like there's not just one way to be Latina. Like there, I feel like we see a lot of like the same culture when
Yeah.
really there's so many different people from so many different areas.
Opportunity is so important, and that's something that me and Nicholas, he plays Timmy in the movie, we were talking about. And it is really important because like let's say, you know, I'm a trans woman who's also Latina, so that's going to open doors for trans women to start playing trans roles and non-trans roles, and also opening doors for other Latinas to come into play. And I'm really hoping and I'm hopeful for the future of the industry that we're in, because I think that they're going to start having fresh new talent, and with that new talent comes different diversities and different people to come and play roles.
Speaking of roles, I'd love to talk through a couple of your projects. First of all, you started out doing a lot of documentary work with the T Word, 15 a Quinceañera story, and Raising Zoe. How did you get into that space and then slowly transition that into some more like, you know, like regular film work?
I had been working with so many different media outlets, and that was a key role in switching into like more film and character work. I think if I didn't do any of the activism that I had been doing for so long, I wouldn't have such a name for myself that would have made me approachable for roles like Lourdes. For the craft, the casting director reached out to me because they were working heavily with GLAAD, and so I had worked with GLAAD on multiple different things, you know, talking about the 15 a Quinceañera story and just talking about multiple different projects. And so I had done a couple things with them. So obviously they're like a huge media outlet, reference for LGBTQ identities. And so when they were speaking to GLAAD about, you know, any recommendations, GLAAD passed my info along and was like, she would be great because they knew I was obsessed with 90s culture and Buffy the Vampire Slayer especially. So they kind of slid over my information. And I think that, yeah, I've made a lot of my roles by having such an open voice in the community. And also I think it's helpful that I was in so many documentaries and I had worked around film crews. I feel like that's something that people just kind of were like, okay, she gets the idea.
Your first project was Boundless, the short film that you did. So what was that audition process like?
It was cool. I was definitely a little confused. I had no idea what the hell sides were. I didn't know that that's what they meant the script was, because I mean I had been doing like musical theater in like middle school, so like I just knew it was like a script. But yeah, that was a little tricky because I didn't know all the like lingo or anything. I had not been auditioning for roles since I was like 2, like most of the people that I was auditioning with. So that was a little tricky, but I mean, it was really sweet. And I was personally reached out to by Rosario. She DM'd
Oh
me on
wow.
Instagram because of one of the people that knew about me in the trans community because of 15 a Quinceañera story and all the work I had been doing. So they were like, I guess they had talked to this one person, and this person was like, oh, because they were trying to cast like a Latina trans woman who was 16 years old. So I was literally all of those qualifications, but Rosario Dawson didn't know how old I was because on my Instagram I like age fished a little bit, and I always like looked older than I was. So she was like, do you know any 16-year-old trans girls in LA that like to act? And I was like, no, but I know this one. It's me. And
You
yeah,
gotta
so she
shoot
was
your
like,
shot, yeah.
yeah, I was like, you're gonna, this is a once in a lifetime DM, like you gotta like, you know, make your mark. So I made my mark and I auditioned, and they didn't even let me know I had the role. But then I get a phone call from Rosario saying, hey, are you coming to the table read today? And I was like, what are you talking about, woman? Like, what's going on? And then she's like, you've been casted. I was like, no one let me know that. And she was like, okay, well, do you want to come? I was like, yeah, I'll be there.
After that, you worked on Pose, which is such an awesome show. I love, just like the energy and the fact that we get to learn so much about ballroom culture. What was it like, being a part of, that the episode that you were a part of?
It was really cool because I knew it was going to be the season 2 finale. So I knew that was going to be like a moment everyone was going to see. So I was like honestly kind of excited for that. I was like, okay, I'll be in an episode that people will probably always remember. And I was super excited because I knew that Ryan Murphy obviously had done a lot of work on that show and like is one of the like producers or writer, probably both. But yeah, I knew that he was a part of it, and I had fallen in love with Madison Montgomery from Coven, so I knew I had to be on a Ryan Murphy show in any capacity. And so when I got the audition for that, I was so excited. And it was funny because I was talking to my manager because I signed on to my people right before I got booked in the craft, because they were like, we're not telling you that you have the role or anything, but we just want to know that you have people to sign for, like so that you can like
Yeah.
write the contracts and everything. And I was like, okay, so I have the role, okay, basically. And so I signed on to my people, and I remember one of the days me and my manager are going out to something. I'm like, do you think Pose is going to reach out to me? And she's like, probably not, they really only cast in like New York. And I was like, we'll see. And then I get the audition like 2 weeks later, and I was like, I knew it. So
Putting it out
that
into the
was really,
universe.
yeah, I mean, I think I have like a lot of like magical powers. Like I feel like I'm pretty clairvoyant. Um, but yeah, Pose was super cool because I literally had only worked with women of color who were directors until the craft. And then I worked with a beautiful, amazing, understanding cis woman who was obviously not of color, but she's great. And yeah, I was just so fortunate to work in my first 3 like big projects with women who were just so freaking amazing.
That's so cool that you were able to work with women of color in like all of your first, projects, because I feel like that's not something you hear very often. I feel like it's something you hear later on in people's career, like, oh yeah, we're trying to work with more people of color. We're trying to work with more diverse voices, and that's so cool that you've been doing that from the beginning.
Yeah, it was really nice. Like at first it was Rosario, then it was Janet Mock, then we transitioned into Zoey Luna.
Now, the craft legacy, it was so much fun. I love how you guys, one, you look like you're having so much fun. It looks like you guys were really close. You had the best clothes. And I love that the story is really about like empowering women together. So can you tell me a little bit about what it was like working on this project?
It was a dream because it was my first movie, and for my first movie, I was surrounded by nothing but women. The DP, the costume designing, entire crew of that were all women. The makeup artists, it was primarily dominated by women. So that was a dream to work on. I felt very supported. I had a lot of people that just understood what I was going through, even if it wasn't like something related to acting. And I just felt very cared for on that project. So it was a dream first. And then it was also just amazing because it felt like school, but not like school. It felt like college. And I mean, it was the first time I was living alone. I had been previously homeless because my mom kicked me out at 17 years old. So I really related a lot to my character because in the casting call, it was saying that she had been kicked out by her mom. And so I was like, wow, this is too perfect of timing. And it was amazing because these women just really embraced me as their sister and were always so polite whenever asking anything about my identity. And yeah, it was so much fun. And I was living in my own apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. I was like, why do I have a 2-bedroom apartment? I'm just one person. But it came in handy. So yeah, it was amazing, and we got to do so much fun stuff. And I learned about doing tarot there, and that was just great.
Oh, that's so fun. So were you guys doing that on set?
Yeah, we literally, like, I remember during one of the last days of filming, we were literally all giving each other tarot readings. And Gideon had gave me a tarot reading really early on, and Lovey was the first person to give me a tarot reading. And that one shook me to the core. So these women were all very, very good. And then I, in turn, became very good and predicted one of my friend's dad's death.
Oh my goodness.
Before it happened.
Wow. So there was like a lot of like potentially real magic going on set.
Yeah, I took it with me into my daily life. And when I came back home from filming The Craft in December of 2019, I gave one of my first tarot readings to my friend. And I just was like, I feel like one of your parents is going to die, but it's like most likely your dad. And I had told them that, and I completely forgot about it because I was doing a lot during that time. So I completely forgot about it. And then months later, during like the beginning days of quarantine, I got a text from that friend, and they're like, my dad is dead, and you were right. And I was like, it was scary, but I mean, you know, I think the magic is everywhere. And one thing that we had to do, had the witches there for, was that they were explaining that magic doesn't know that you're acting, and magic doesn't know that you're putting that out into the world because you're playing a part. So that was one of the key elements that the witches provided on set, was like the reassurance, and like also, you know, if we're going to conjure anything, we're not going to conjure anything negative or harmful. And so I think all of the spells worked, and my life's pretty great now.
Do you think that you guys will do a sequel? I feel like it opened up kind of the possibility to do that. And if so, what do you want your character to be doing next?
I don't know if we're doing a sequel. I don't know. But what I would want, and this is just me like spitballing here, I would want to see my character include other trans people into the movie, other LGBTQ identities. I would like to see my character also become a little bisexual herself, because I think something that was always missing in The Craft was that queer aspect from the women. And I feel like we can do it in such a non-male gazy way that's going to be very impactful. And I would love to express maybe a trans woman being bisexual, because I think that that's something that has a lot of misconceptions with. So yeah, I would love to see my character fall in love on screen with someone.
That would be so cool. I definitely want to see that. So crossing my fingers.
You
guys had such very like positive energies with what like the magic that you were doing in the project versus like, I guess the original film, there was, you know, a lot of like, you know, darker powers, it kind of seemed like, even like changing Timmy and kind of making him a more accepting, sensitive person. Nothing was ever like malicious, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I thought that was super sweet, and I love the addition of bringing men into the storyline, because, you know, in the first one, there is a guy that is the crush, and he kind of brings a lot of hardships. And I think that if, like, we just started to understand men a little more, or not maybe understand them more, because I think women are pretty fucking understanding. So I think that it was super nice to have that addition into the cast, because it wasn't like such a hardcore feminist, like, extremist movie where it was like, screw men are the reason we're all having all these problems. You know, it was like, whoa, we're going to kind of unknowingly have a curse and a blessing. We're going to bring this kid out into our world as like who he is really meant to be, and we're going to wokenize him and make him a better person. And we're also not going to shush him away, and we're going to like learn about his side of the story. So I really appreciated that aspect of the Craft legacy, and I was very happy that that was included, and it wasn't just like an anti-men film.
the fact that like we got to see like positive bisexual representation, which I feel like is also something we don't always get to see. And just in general, with your character as well, we get to see really positive just in general LGBTQ representation. I'm curious about how you feel like LGBTQ plus representation is done and what you would like to see in terms of how people's experiences are portrayed.
I mean, we see so many transitions in movies, like even in cis roles. Like, Katie Heron goes through like a really huge transition in Mean Girls. And so, like, I feel like it's a good trope to have in movies, and it shows a lot of development, and that's one of the easiest ways to do it. But I also think that, with trans stories, I feel like the transition has been so heavily covered throughout media, and that's something that so many people can spend hours talking about, which I think is kind of just like blah, because I mean it's like it's really like, yeah, we just start wearing the clothes that we start to wear, but that's nothing in comparison to all of the like other traumas we have as individuals. Like, I've been a victim of rape, I've been a victim of profiling. I mean, not from my color or anything, but because I am trans, and at one point before I knew what trans was, I was an openly gay kid. So I've gone through a whole lot regardless of being just my trans identity. So I think if we are going to tell more stories that are necessarily focused on the trans experience, I would love to see more of a story that dives into the intersectionalities of trans people, instead of just like, oh, we're trans, let me give you the 101. You know what I mean? There's so many documentaries I've been in that have explained that perfectly. And I just think that, if we're going to focus on a trans role, do it with a trans person leading that. I hated 3 Generations because the writer or director, he just did not completely understand what it is to be a trans person. And he kept addressing the trans male character as her. And she's just living her life as a trans boy. And she's this. But if you're creating a trans boy, you only address them as a trans boy. And also you hire a freaking male to play a trans boy, or an actual trans boy to play a trans boy. I think that's something that's super important. I'm tired of seeing the opposite gender play roles that are for trans women, like a male playing a trans woman when we're women or men. So, yeah, I mean, I love going into stories that are fully about our identities, but I also do love the way that The Craft just included my storyline, but didn't make that the storyline. Like, they included my background, but without making it the plot of me. I loved it. I thought that was so not coy, but just slick. And I thought it was timely and relevant. And I think that more movies, if they're going to have just intersectional identities, not making that their whole arc. So yeah, I was very proud and pleased with that role.
I want to be able to see people telling their own experiences across the board, like, because I think then you get more authentic stories, and you get to see different types of stories, not just the same thing that someone who's not even in that identity thinks that's what the identity is like.
Yeah, I mean, we're not always like LA Pride, trans people central, like I'm going to therapy not for my trans identity, but for like the shit that's happened to me as a child with my mom and my family. And I think, I think that people still haven't realized that trans people are more than being just trans, and maybe they haven't realized that we are people too, and that we go through things. So I'm here to say, we go through things. We're just like you. We just have a different way of becoming ourselves.
What do you do, and also what can others do to help bring more awareness to representation?
If someone wants to bring more representation into the world through their art or through their documentaries, anything, I think they should definitely at least be somewhat educated, like know the background and the preface to whatever you're trying to include, whether it's a Black story or if it's a trans story or if it's a Latino story. Understand the culture before you just say, oh my God, I want to do this. And if you want to do it, understand why you want to do it, and not just because you feel like it's something that's going to get you cash, which I think is a lot of the reason why we've had such horrible portrayals of trans people in media, because it's just a cash gimmick. And so, yeah, definitely educate yourself, know why you want to do it, and then also in the politest way possible with whoever you're trying to focus on, get to know their experience and understand how that makes them, and see, and learn from the people, learn from them themselves, instead of just asking other white people or asking other people like you, ask some trans people, maybe sit in at a like group therapy session if you're allowed to. I mean, like go to the LGBTQ center, you know, like find information from actual people that are the ones to dish it, not your best friend Susie, who's not even like bisexual. I've been considered an activist since I was like 12 years old. I've learned a lot, but I mean, I was kind of thrusted into the whole activism world, so it was crazy for me to go through that. And like, you know, I'm not regretting any of it because I think it was all very necessary, and I still think I'm always going to be spreading information and the truth. But I think it's a little difficult when you're labeling yourself as an activist, but you're not covering all stories and everything that goes on. Because I mean, first of all, I'm a person, and I think that that's something that a lot of people maybe didn't get the impression of. And so there's a lot of being an activist, and I don't know if I'm most qualified to be an activist, but what I can say is that I'm always willing to share my story, and not because I want to exclude anyone else's. I'll always repost any story that I see on Instagram or, you know, in the news, and I'll talk about other people's intersectional identities, but in a way that's not like me interjecting myself into them. And so I think that for me, it's all about expressing what I know and becoming more educated. And so I guess what I want to change the world with my presence in it is just to make this world a more accepting place and to provide a sense of security for the people that don't have security. You know, I'm not saying I'm Mother Teresa. I'm not saying I'm Martin Luther King. I am just this woman who, a trans woman who's also Latina, who was given a platform at a very young age, and is now an actress. And I'll share how I feel if it's being asked, but I also will always represent, you know, a part of my community that is trans and Latinx, and also a white passing person as myself. So I'll always represent those. But yeah, mostly I just want to make the world a more accepting place for other people like me.
Where can people find you?
You can catch me on Twitter at Zoey the Witch, or you can catch me on Instagram at I am Zoey Luna, or my handle is Astro Bitch. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. You killed it in the Craft Legacy.
Oh my God, thank you.
If you guys like this one, you can check out more Pop Culture Planet right over here. See ya.